Hello YouTube friends, welcome to the last homely house. I'm Kate and I'm down in my cabin today and I'm catching up on stitching this Liberty.
She picked up her camera at 61 years old, broke, grieving, and completely alone, and the internet fell in love with her. But here's what nobody tells you. The woman behind one of YouTube's most beloved channels built it on the ruins of a life that had completely fallen apart. Kate Jackson of The Last Homely House looks like the picture of peaceful, intentional living. Cats curled in baskets of yarn, sourdough on the counter, quilts stitched by hand in a stone cottage in the north of England. But behind all of that warmth, there is a story most of her 233,000 subscribers have never heard in full, and it is far more complicated and far more human than her videos let on. The woman they don't see. Most people find Kate Jackson the same way. They stumble across a video of her hand-stitching a quilt or feeding her goose Eileen, and something about it makes them stop scrolling. There is no jump cut, no trending sound, no ring light, just a woman in a cottage talking to a camera like she's talking to a friend. It feels easy. It feels effortless. And that's exactly why what happened behind the scenes is so surprising. Because Kate didn't start this channel from a place of contentment. She started it from a place of near-complete collapse. Here's what you don't see when you're watching her stitch hexagons on a Sunday afternoon. The years before the camera turned on. The decade in which everything she thought her life would be quietly unraveled. The unexpected divorce, the financial instability, the career she had to step back from. And then, sitting on top of all of that, the death of her best friend. That's the part that tends to get glossed over or mentioned in passing as a kind of backstory footnote. But it wasn't a footnote. It was the thing that nearly broke her. Kate had built her life alongside this friendship. And then, her best friend was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, a condition with no cure. One that steadily takes away your ability to move, speak, and eventually breathe. Kate watched her closest friend go through that, and then she was gone. Kate admitted in her 2024 interview with The Guardian that those years were genuinely dark. She was struggling financially, emotionally depleted, and, in her own words, found it hard to reimagine herself. That phrase is deceptively simple. To reimagine yourself means the original picture is gone. The life you planned, the identity you built, the future you expected, all of it had to be grieved and then rebuilt from scratch. And she was doing all of that alone, in her 50s, in a small cottage in rural Northumberland. What she did next is the part that most people skip straight past to get to the YouTube success story. She left. She got on a plane to New Zealand, bought a bus pass, and traveled the country by herself. No plan, no itinerary, just movement and time. And she came back healed. Her word, not a summary of it. She came back ready, in a way she hadn't been before, to actually live the quiet, intentional life she'd always wanted, and to share it. That is the real foundation of The Last Homely House. Not a cozy aesthetic, not a brand. A woman who had nothing left to lose decided to show up as exactly who she was. 61, an iPad, and a brick. Most YouTube success stories start with someone young, with gear, with a strategy. Kate's started with none of those things. In 2017, she propped her iPad against a brick in her garden, sat down at her spinning wheel, pressed record, and started talking. That was it. No script, no plan, no ring light, no editing software, no idea whether anyone would even watch. She had been watching YouTube herself for years. Gardening tutorials, cooking videos, craft content, and one day she thought the thing she would later become known for saying, "How hard can it be?" She uploaded once a week. She talked while she spun wool, while she baked bread, while she sorted through fabric scraps and hand-stitched quilt squares. Her village didn't even have decent broadband until 2017, which gives you a sense of just how remote and unhurried the world she was inviting people into actually was. What's fascinating about those early videos is that there was absolutely nothing calculated about them. Kate didn't sit down and think about an audience or a niche. She just showed her life. her real one, not a curated version of it. The mismatched pottery, the muffins that came out wrong, the dropped recipe card that she filmed herself fishing out of the pan and kept in the edit because her audience, she later said, absolutely loved it. She named the channel The Last Homely House, a reference that, unless you're a Tolkien reader, probably means nothing at first. In The Hobbit, J.R.R., Tolkien describes Rivendell, the elven refuge, as the last homely house, a perfect place where you like food or sleep, storytelling or singing, or just sitting and thinking. Merely to be there, he wrote, was a cure for weariness, fear, and sadness. Kate read that and recognized her home in it, not in an idealized way. She'd lived in that same stone cottage in Northumberland for over 35 years. She raised 3 children there. It had seen grief and divorce and long, quiet winters, but it was hers, and she wanted it to feel to whoever found her channel, like the description Tolkien gave Rivendell, a place to rest. The name landed, and slowly, then faster than she expected, the people came. The life that built the channel before there was a YouTube channel, there was a life. And it is actually the most interesting part of the story. Kate Jackson wasn't a content creator who happened to live in the countryside. She was a midwife, then a teacher. She grew her own food, made her own clothes, baked her own bread, and tried her hand at pottery, felting, spinning, weaving, and bookbinding, long before any of it was a slow living aesthetic on the internet. She grew up with resourceful parents who built the habit in her early. If you can grow it or make it, you do that first before you buy it. She raised her 3 children, John and 2 others, in that same Northumberland cottage. Her family didn't just observe the handmade life, they were woven into it. And that becomes more relevant later, because the channel didn't stay Kate's alone for long. But there's something worth pausing on here, because it reframes the whole channel. Most people who watch The Last Homely House experience it as a destination, a place to go when the world feels too fast or too loud. What they're actually watching is the output of someone who spent 60+ years practicing the skills she's sharing. The quilting isn't a hobby she picked up for YouTube. The sourdough starter isn't a prop. The garden isn't staged. Kate has been doing all of this, quietly, for decades. The camera just finally turned on. That also explains why the channel doesn't feel like content. It doesn't follow YouTube logic, where you need a hook in the first 5 seconds and a call to action every 3 minutes. Kate just talks. She shows you what she's working on. She shares her mistakes with the same ease as her successes. And in a space filled with performance and optimization, that kind of honesty reads as almost radical. Her quilting, in particular, became the heart of the channel. Not just as a craft she demonstrates, but as a metaphor for how she approaches everything. Patient, methodical, beautiful in an unshowy way. She hand quilts rather than using a machine, a slower, more demanding process. And she's spoken openly about how there's a meditative quality to it. She even collaborated with Aurifil, a premium thread brand, to create a custom thread collection called Slow Stitching at The Last Homely House. She curated the colors herself. Colors she loves, she said, which is the most Kate Jackson thing she could possibly say about a product collaboration. The price of openness. Here is where the story gets more complicated and more honest. Because Kate Jackson being on the internet means Kate Jackson has an internet. She is remarkably open on her channel. She talks about the divorce. She has mentioned the grief. She shares her children, her grandchildren, her daughters-in-law. She films her mistakes and her messy moments. And that openness, which is the very thing her community loves most about her, has also made her a target. The Guardian interview in 2024 mentioned something that the cozy YouTube narrative around Kate tends to skip. People have turned up at her door. She withholds her exact location for this reason. The same openness that makes her feel like a friend to hundreds of thousands of people has also, on occasion, collapsed the boundary between a viewer and a stranger showing up uninvited at a rural cottage in Northumberland. She has also spoken about the intrusive questions that come through online. Questions about her private life, her finances, her family. She has drawn a line, and she's been clear about it. There has to be a point at which you say, "No, I'm not going to share this." For someone whose entire channel is built on the feeling of intimacy, that boundary is more complicated to maintain than it sounds. The audience that loves her because she feels like an old friend can sometimes forget that the relationship only works in one direction. And then there's the criticism, because not everyone who found the last homely house was charmed by it. Kate's lifestyle, intentionally slow, deliberately unmaterialistic, centered on crafts and home and garden, attracted its share of people who questioned her choices publicly. Some of the criticism was about the lifestyle itself, the suggestion that this kind of quiet, domestically focused life was somehow backward or retrograde for a woman. Some of it was about her age, the implication that a woman in her 60s starting a YouTube channel was a curiosity rather than a creator. Some of it was about the way she made money from the channel, the shop, the Patreon, the seasonal boxes, from people who apparently expected genuine warmth to be free. Kate addressed none of it defensively. That's the thing. She has never positioned herself as someone trying to prove anything. She tends to acknowledge criticism with the same even-handedness she brings to everything else. But it would be naive to imagine that none of it landed. She built something deeply personal and then released it into a space that has no particular interest in being careful with personal things. What kept her steady, by her own account, was the community itself, a comment section that reads less like the internet and more like letters from old friends, a fan-run Facebook group, viewers who meet each other at craft festivals and recognize each other on sight, tearful and grateful, not for Kate specifically, but for what finding her channel gave them. Permission, mostly. Permission to slow down. Permission to be alone without being lonely. Permission to do something simply because you love doing it, without turning it into a performance or a side hustle or a statement about your personal brand. The lime green sofa and the people it holds. This is the part of the story that the numbers can't quite capture, though the numbers do matter. Over 230,000 subscribers, a YouTube silver play button, a second channel, The Last Homely Garden, already building its own loyal following, nearly 100,000 Instagram followers, a Patreon community, an online shop where seasonal boxes sell out within hours, a debut book, Kate's Book of Things, released in 2024 and already gathering glowing reviews, a quilting workshop she led on a cruise past the Arctic Circle in early 2024, past the Norwegian coast, with the northern lights overhead. By any conventional metric, Kate Jackson has built a successful creative business from scratch, in her 60s, in a rural cottage, without a team of marketers, or a strategy document, or a single brand deal, demanding prominence in her content. Her newsletter goes out monthly, run by her daughter-in-law, Rita. Her children edit videos and photographs, run the shop, create illustrations, appear on screen. The channel has become, quietly, a family enterprise, and Kate has described watching her children invest in it as one of the greatest joys of her life. But none of that, the subscribers, the book, the Arctic cruise, is what people actually come back to the channel for. What they come back for is something much simpler and much harder to manufacture. During the pandemic, Kate came up with an image to describe what she imagined when she thought about her viewers. She pictured all of them sitting together on a vast, never-ending sofa. She called it the lime green sofa. Everyone had a seat. Everyone had a cup of tea. It was a place where you could rest and be quiet and not feel alone. The image caught on in the way that true things tend to catch on. Viewers made badges with it. They shared their crafts under the hashtag TLHH. They found each other at festivals and introduced themselves by it. And the people who found the lime green sofa in the hardest years of their lives, the women going through divorce, navigating grief, living alone for the first time and not knowing how to be okay with it, those are the people who fill Kate's comment section. Not to watch a tutorial, not to keep up with a creator, but because Kate Jackson, without meaning to and without trying to, became proof that a life alone doesn't have to be a lesser life, that you can be a woman in her 60s in a small cottage with a spinning wheel and a goose and a lime green sofa, and not only be fine, but be the most interesting person on the internet. The untold truth. So here is the thing nobody really says about Kate Jackson and the last homely house. The most remarkable thing about her is not the channel. It's not the subscribers, or the book, or the Arctic cruise. It's the timing. Kate had her divorce in her early 50s. She lost her best friend. She struggled financially. She traveled to New Zealand alone to recover. She came home, and she had a few quiet years in her cottage before broadband arrived in her village. And then, at 61, she turned the camera on. She has been asked whether she wishes she had started earlier. Her answer, from that 2024 Guardian interview, is worth sitting with. Sometimes she does, she said, but she also knows she had to go through all of it first. She wouldn't have appealed to the same people if she had been younger. The grief and the divorce and the rebuilding, all of that is encoded in the channel, even when she's not talking about it directly. You can feel it in the steadiness she has, the lack of urgency, the way she can sit with an imperfect muffin or a mismatched quilt block without needing it to be anything other than what it is. There is a version of this story where Kate's loss is the sad part and the YouTube success is the redemption arc. But that framing misses something. The loss didn't just lead to the channel. The loss is what the channel is made of. The whole project, the slow pace, the handmade ethos, the insistence on doing things for the pleasure of doing them rather than the outcome, is a direct response to a life that taught Kate the hard way that futures can be taken away without warning, that best friends don't always stay, that the plan you had for your life might not be the life you end up with, and so you had better find meaning in the making, in the present, in the stitch in your hand right now. The last homely house, in the end, is not really about crafts. It's not really about slow living, or the English countryside, or hand quilting techniques. It's about what it looks like when someone has genuinely figured out how to be okay. Not performatively, not as a brand, just actually, quietly, essentially okay. And the 233,000 people who keep coming back every fortnight on a Sunday evening know it, even if they couldn't say it in those words. Kate Jackson is 70 years old now. She marked the milestone on her Patreon, describing it as a fact she can't quite believe. She is still in the cottage, still hand quilting, still feeding Eileen the goose, and unfilming her cats, and making things by hand, and talking about all of it with the same unhurried warmth that caught people's attention 8 years ago when she propped an iPad against a brick in her garden and asked herself how hard it could be. The sad truth about Kate Jackson and the last homely house is not that anything went wrong. It's that something went profoundly right, but only after years of things going wrong first. And if you've found her channel at a hard moment in your own life, that's not a coincidence. That's exactly who she built it for. What are your thoughts about Kate Jackson and the last homely house? Share with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.